Thank you very much. So the intent this afternoon is to have a discussion about how we keep building the microelectronics industry in Canada. Over my career, I've been involved with over 20 companies, either as a founder, chair, or funder. And of all those companies, anything that was semiconductor is pretty much gone. So we're here today almost starting the industry from scratch again, which is a crazy place to be, but that's where we are. And as you heard Antoine speak earlier on, how we're going to do that and how we're going to face the challenges that the industry poses is the subject of the discussion today. On the one hand, if you're trying to do pure digital stuff and you're paying millions of dollars for a mask set, it costs you $25 to $50 million to build a product. That just doesn't fly as a new venture. But on the other hand, as we get below 28 nanometers, silicon is running out of steam, and that constant progression is no longer there, so maybe that's a huge opportunity for new innovation. So that's what we want to get into today. And so I'll go to my right to our first panelist, Bruce. Each panelist will introduce themselves, talk very briefly about what it is that's motivating them in their current company and why they're doing what they're doing, and then we'll throw it open for questions. So Bruce, please.
Hi, I'm Bruce Gregory. I'm the CEO of a new startup in Ottawa called Corsa Technology, doing some hardware for the software-defined networking world, which is not the oxymoron that it actually sounds like. I guess the question or the thing that's posed is the smart digital economy starts and grows companies. I turn it around a little bit and go, the companies grow the economy. It's not the other way around. The economy's there, the digital economy's there. It gives us an opportunity. But it really is really good companies that are going to increase that and hopefully increase it in Canada. There's a couple of things that we have to realize, and we'll talk more on questions because I don't want to talk too long right now. But the startups that are really successful see an opportunity that nobody else sees, and it's out there 1 or 2 years. And they're able to communicate the vision of what they want to do and convince people that there is a market there and that they'll be successful, and they get that company started. That's the kind of critical advantage that you have to have, is that you've seen something that nobody else has seen, and you're going to be able to deliver to a market that may or may not be there. I mean, that's one of the reasons this is such a risky business, is that you're picking a market and it's not guaranteed. The real problem with doing that in Canada is we're Canadian, and we don't do that well. We like certainty, we don't like risk, and when it comes back, so Adam said, why are we doing it, or why am I doing it? And this is the 4th startup that I've done, so clearly I'm addicted to doing them. I just can't stop. But it is, you just have to believe that you want to do this here, and that it has to be done, and doing it in Canada is kind of the right thing. We're going to get into the challenges of doing it in Canada in a couple of minutes, and they are significant. But I'll let everybody else talk first, and then we'll dive into the questions.
Thanks, Ali.
Hi, I'm Ali Ors. I'm with Cognivue, replacing Simon, who's our CEO on travel, actually. And Cognivue is a 13-year-old startup, which sounds a bit weird, but we've gone through multiple changes. We've been a venture-backed startup. We got acquired. We were a design cost center for a foreign-owned, Korean-owned company. And then we, in the last 3-4 years, we did a management buyout, spin out, and became a Canadian company again. And similar to what Bruce was saying, we've had difficulties in the ecosystem and the risk-taking that we see from the funding model. We've modified our business model to actually change, to adapt to what's available in Canada, so we could stay in Canada and still have a company here. And we can talk later on those details.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yes. I'm Jeff Dionne, the CEO of Smart Energy Instruments. It's been interesting during today and yesterday to hear everybody talking about the challenges of being a Canadian company and doing semiconductors and things like that. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I can't remember how many ventures I've done. And I think one thing I can say is, in order to make them successful, I've always had to look outside of Canada. And so if I can sort of give a message for my view of how you make a successful company, You can do the technology here. You can export great things from Canada, but it's about ecosystems and partnerships in the rest of the world that really make a company successful when you're Canadian-based.
Thank you. Ken,
Can I stand up?
please.
I've got enough overheads for probably 25 minutes. This is one of mine. I was the last person on the panel requested to come here today, with good reason. This may be my last chance to talk on a panel, also with good reason. Everybody else here is involved in VC-funded startups. I'm not. I'm trying to do it a bit on my own, second time. I don't believe VC-funded startups work. That's my overhead. Can we go to the next one?
Sure. I think you just...
Oh, okay. Well, the question is, what's your goal? And if your goal is to get a company to the level of $50 to $100 million and to then sell it off to Broadcom or Qualcomm, help the Americans get rich, get bigger, yeah, then a VC-funded startup will work. If your goal is to actually have a positive impact in Canada, they don't work. Why? Next one.
Yep.
It's real simple. VCs won't wait long enough. It's too expensive, and they won't wait. The cost is accounting, not even 101, it's like 001. You could estimate your cost within 10%, easily. These numbers are the same ones that Antoine said, except he forgot the cost of borrowing money, which is 25% a year compounded. So your costs are going to be almost certainly up on the order of $50 million. And if you honestly put a schedule in with best case scenario, you cannot go black in less than 6.5 years. You don't have enough time to pay them back. They're going to try and sell you off. They're going to lay off all the engineers. They're going to dilute the daylights out of the founders. Founders get nothing. Everybody's worked 60 hours a week. You end up with nothing, except maybe a small salary in the fun of working for 6.5 years. Doesn't work. Bottom line, what can you do? There's only a single thing you can do, period. Don't know how to do it, but that's what you have to do. You have to get revenue in the first year. And you must be almost black in the first year. I almost say, don't start, or at least don't get bigger than 2 people until you get a source of revenue from a customer. Bottom line.
Great. Thank you. So maybe just to kick it off, I'll ask one more question along the table, and then we'll open it to the floor. So can each of you just talk about the thing that you see as the biggest challenge in starting a new enterprise?
So I guess for me, the real challenge, and it's interesting if you look at the answer to the poll question going out of the last session, is that there is no real ecosystem for startups in Canada. And what that ends up being is for someone like me, it means I don't expect anything. And so I have to do it all on my own. It also means I spend an awful lot of time in the US. There is venture capital in Canada, but it's limited and has a limited view. So I spend a ton of time in the US talking to investors in the US. But I also have to, Jeff brought it up when he was talking, there's no business in Canada for me either. My business is global. I have to sell all over the world. And so the challenge here is that how do we work together as either companies or universities, investors, and companies to start building an ecosystem. And unfortunately, Adam said it, we're kind of starting all over again from ground zero. I just have to assume right now with anything that I'm doing that I'm on my own, and I have to figure out a way to make this work on my own. And I find that just a little bit sad that we have to operate that way in Canada.
Thank you. Ali?
Very similar struggles that we had. As I mentioned, we are a 13-year-old startup, but we're not really VC-backed right now. Having had that many years, we actually spun off with products, so we had revenue. We were able to bootstrap ourselves, and we looked for VC funding, and that wasn't happening because it was a different model. It wasn't a blue skies type of investment. There was product. It was too hard to get VCs on board with the model that we had. So what we've gone ahead with is actually our customers became our strategic investors in the company, and we also got angels, even though we're a fairly mature company. We had angel investment, which was different for the angel investors themselves, but it's working out right now. But finding VC cash that is risk, that is willing to take some risk has been an issue. And the ecosystem of a startup, of finding the right support, being able to access certain things that large companies have access to that cost a lot of money up front was a problem for us as well.
Thanks. Jeff?
Yeah. I've been a little bit fortunate over my career. I've built a lot of connections with large companies in many different countries. So the ecosystem was there for me when I decided to do this business. So that might be a little bit different. I think one of the things that you have to accept is that the size of a startup is going to be limited by the cash that it can get from venture capitals, or more appropriately, to your point, I think, from strategics. So if you can do non-recurring engineering contracts, if you can do that sort of thing, it takes you off your path, but it definitely is a good thing for your dilution and for your exit. The main thing that's really been constraining our company up to now is the expectations of the venture people run ahead of what engineering and business development can really do. And so that means that the company should be larger than it is, and the execution engine is not caught up with where we need to be. So I think I've just made your case for you, haven't I?
I would actually say that's done purposely, so you don't meet milestones.
Oh, for sure.
So you can be diluted.
I fully agree with that. Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Ken, do you want to add something?
There are things that could be done in Canada to help the situation. I might have a slide a little bit later on. But if we look around the world, there's been excellent examples. A good one was in Taiwan, which was the start of TSMC. There are other examples happening now. There's things happening in India. There's things happening in all the major cities in mainland China. And there's stuff happening in Mexico and Brazil right now. And mostly what they are is the government will put some infrastructure into place. They'll look after CAD costs, which are huge for a startup. And they might help, for example, on looking after CMC and multi-project wafers. And the other thing would be loans, not forgivable loans, but loans that you don't have to start paying interest until you actually start getting revenue coming in the door.
Okay, thank you. So we got lots of entrepreneurs in the room and lots of people trying to build companies. So let's open up to the questions for the panel, please. Who would like to go first? Oh, over there.
Starting up as entrepreneurs, as individuals starting our new companies. I just wanted to tell you what I know happened at ST Micro with their MEMS. There was a gentleman called Benedetto Vigna who basically was working within ST, and he believed that there was a future in MEMS. So he went to the management and he said, I think you should be putting a lot of money into MEMS, and I'm prepared to actually put my hand in my pocket and put money in as well. And that convinced them to put money in, which is what ended up with ST, being successful as they are now. So my point is, even people who work within organizations theoretically have a possibility to start interesting new ventures in a similar way.
Okay. Do you also have a question?
No, it's just a comment.
Okay. Please.
I have a question about what's the role of university in all this? Essentially, we all know, I think Professor Cohen mentioned that it's pretty cheap in university to spin out a CMOS design or whatnot in salary and CAD. Can a startup somewhat use the university as a tool, or I should rather say a partner? Do you have any comments on what's the role of university in startup creation and support?
Sure. I'll make a comment and then I'll ask the panelists to comment also. I think it was actually interesting on the previous slide when you did the voting, the thing that came out on top was R&D ecosystem. I don't think R&D ecosystem means anything to starting a company. Understanding a customer and the need and the market is what it's all about, and technology comes second. So I think from a university point of view, R&D isn't the only thing you should be thinking about. You should be thinking about the other side of the business as well. And with that, maybe, Bruce, do you want to take it and we'll...
Absolutely, because I think it's one of the things, so I'm a Carleton grad and I have fairly good ties into Carleton, and we'll sort of start exploiting that in the next little while. But one of the things you notice is in the US in particular, I'll call it the Stanford-Berkeley mafia. And if you're a startup company in Silicon Valley, your ties back to the universities in general and all through the US is the way this works. The ecosystem is set up so that the universities encourage professors and grad students to go out into industry and come back. So if you look at the industry I'm in, which is software-defined networking, there was a company called Nicira that was acquired by VMware just over a year ago for $1.2 billion. They were doing about $9 million a year in revenue. So I liked the math on that one. The founders of that company were Nick McEwen, who's a prof at Stanford, Scott Schenker, who's a prof at Berkeley, Martin Casado, who was a grad student, a PhD student of Nick's at Stanford. And that's one tiny example of how that ecosystem works. If you go back through most of the startups that have been successful in the Valley, you'll find ties back. So I think that's one of the areas that we can work on. The onus is on us as well to reach out to the universities and work with the universities to build sort of that circle where the technology, we can work with universities and support them. The universities support the professors and the grad students coming out and going back when they're done. So both Scott and Nick, for example, did Nicira for a couple of years. The company was acquired. They're both back at the universities doing research again, teaching classes again. So I actually think it's a strong component of what we need to do.
Anybody else on the panel would like, please, Ken?
Broadcom was started by university professor came out of ICSL at UCLA. Qualcomm started out of a university. Teresa Cheng's company that got bought by Qualcomm University. What the universities supply are really good people. And I would say that a huge amount of very successful technology companies are a result of those people. In electrical engineering, I don't know of one successful company that was because of a product developed inside the research of a university that was commercialized. People, yes, products, no.
Thank you. Anybody else in the audience would like to take this question? How should universities help us build this microelectronics ecosystem?
Adam, I'd like to give our view on...
Ali, go ahead.
So what has worked with Cognivue, we've actually, as Bruce put it, exploited the university ecosystem quite well as far as we're concerned. I'm not just talking about co-op students coming in through the system. We have a partnership with University of Ottawa and some other universities as well, depending on the type of research. We do support through NSERC engage programs, which have worked out really well for us. Certain research where the company dedicates either cash or in-kind contributions to the research and helps the students complete something, and the IP is either co-owned or transferred over to the company. What we've seen in the recent years is that the technology transfer offices of the universities have actually started changing the way they work with the companies and are more open to that technology transfer, to that IP transfer, and to actually building companies or helping existing companies grow with the research that's coming out of universities.
Thank you. Sure, Ken?
The reason why university research is not commercialized, it's real simple. It's strictly a matter of dollars. IRAP is $50,000. $50,000 pays for a quarter of a body per year. You can't do anything as a quarter of a body. They think they're giving big money at $200,000. If you want to do a real startup, we're talking 30 million. 200 just doesn't do it.
Thank you. Linda.
Theme that Ken introduced, and you've kind of echoed a little bit as well, Adam, the centrality of customers in the construction of a startup. Doug Barber and Jeff Krellenston did some research for us a couple of years ago that looked at, for want of a better word, startups that failed or didn't meet their projected outcomes, were either acquired earlier than anticipated, were liquidated, and virtually 100% of the folks that they examined had started their venture without customers. So maybe you could reflect on this a little bit and give us a sense of where you are in terms of customer attraction, what your business models are in terms of ensuring there are customers in your ambit as you build other lines of business. I don't know very much about Corsa. Can you tell us what you're doing and where you're at, who your customers are? I think I'd have the same question for you, Jeff. I think it's a little more obvious with Ali's company. You started with kind of a legacy customer and have managed to keep them going. And Ken, you probably got some customers in your hip pocket. But I think this is a very critical piece of intelligence that I'd like you to impart if you could.
Thank you, Linda. So Bruce and then Jeff.
Sure.
So you need to know, at least in the business, I mean, you need to know who the customers are. And hopefully you've been in this business for a while so that you can talk to them as you're developing the idea. And that's a pre-funding discussion that you have with those customers. So that the way venture funding works, one of the things now that's very difficult is what we used to do for a Series A or a Series B. The angel investors want to see customer traction before they put the money in. It's very, very hard to get because no customer is going to sign up for a product that doesn't exist yet. But you need to work those people, and you end up developing very deep contacts into your customers so that they will talk to investors on your behalf and say, well, I'm not going to guarantee we're going to buy this, but this is definitely an area that we're interested in, and our business is moving in this direction, so if that product arrives on time and on price, then we're definitely going to be a customer for a product like that. It's a very much a chicken and egg kind of thing, and so it ends up coming down to the other thing you need as an entrepreneur in this, so it's very hard for the first-time people, is you need to have demonstrated that you can do this before. So when we raised money this time, and it was extremely difficult, I think Antoine talked about how hard it was for him to raise money as well. And I have 3 other founders with me, and we've done north of $1 billion in exits, and it took us 18 months to raise our Series A funding. And we did that by having customers that people could talk to, but largely because we had past history of being able to deliver product and secure customers. So there's a chicken and egg for the first-time person. If you can't name your customers, you don't know what you're doing. So if you can't go, these are my customers and this is who I'm going to sell to, you need to recognize that, go back and do the work until you do.
Thank you.
So this time around, it wasn't very difficult to get funded. Maybe that's a story not too many people can tell, but the reason is we had researched what the product was for 20 years. Actually, we had the technology and we put it on the shelf. There's some new things now because time has moved on, but generally speaking, we knew who the customers were. We'd worked with them before. And so when we went to the venture community, we could say, these are the people lined up behind us who say, if it does work, if you can actually do what you say you can do. And by the way, we've taken a look at what you say you're going to do, and that makes sense, right? Then we will buy that. And at that point, you have both potentially a strategic investor in the minds of the VC you're talking to right now, and you also have a built-in customer if you're going to get there. The partnerships that you build in that way are hopefully the ones that last. They have been in the previous companies that I built. And of course, some of the same companies are involved as different people because this is a different product, but nonetheless, that's how we've approached that. And I think there was a story I heard a bunch of years ago. Some engineer had a brilliant idea about peeling tomatoes, and he spent much of his spare time trying to figure out how to do this. And he had this fantastic, Rube Goldberg machine that was going to peel tomatoes. And when he passed away, his wife tried to commercialize this thing, and it turns out it's a solved problem, but he didn't know that, so he didn't talk to anyone. And so this is what we can't do, right? And I think that might be one of the reasons why you're seeing failed startups. So they have what is a brilliant idea, but it might be a solved problem, or there are other issues with that. And so partnerships and customer validation early on is something that you should seek as an entrepreneur before you decide to do the business, as opposed to later.
Thank you. Another question from the floor? Okay, so maybe we'll go around the panel again. Have there been any government programs or government initiatives that have helped you do what you're doing? Maybe start with Ken this time.
No.
Okay, that was easy.
That was
Ali,
quite
how
specific.
about you?
Yes, we've been kind of lucky. We were introduced early on to the Mars organization. I'm not sure how many people from Ontario have seen Mars. It's sort of an outreach organization and a networking organization, kind of like this one, actually. That was quite good. They were instrumental in helping us raise some government funding. We have OCGC, and we also have FedDev, which I'm sure a lot of you also do. And so when I look at that compared to our US colleagues, we've all done business in the US as well, we know what that market is like, but also in Japan, where I have a subsidiary, Ontario specifically has been very good for our company. So that I can say is a very positive thing.
Can I
about being-
add something
Sure,
to that?
please.
When I first started Granite, I called up Mars. They sent me the application papers, actually got them online, filled them all in. They wouldn't even give me an answer back.
Ali, do you have a comment?
I do. We have used a lot of programs at different levels. We're a Gatineau company, actually, even though most of our workforce is Ottawa residents. And we made the move 4 years ago from Ontario to Quebec, specifically for government programs. And that has worked out better for us in terms of SHRED funding. And we've also made use of IRAP. As I mentioned, we made use of Engage grants with NSERC. We've also had access to economic development funds through the Quebec government, provincial government, for marketing and sales related funds. So the programs are there, and they're available at different levels depending on what the company's doing and who they're engaging with.
Thank you.
That's right.
Anybody thought of anything else they'd like to ask? No?
Can I add one positive comment?
Sure. Let's do that.
With respect, what Mars is good for is to help you identify people you should be talking with. That's where it comes in handy. The funding is so small as to almost be a joke.
So maybe one more question. At the bottom of our ecosystem, there's a lot of investment going on right now in incubators and accelerators. Do you have an opinion as to whether this is a good thing or not a good thing? Bruce, maybe start with you.
So thinking very generally, there can't be anything bad about an incubator. I think the problem is the answer that Ken and Jeff just gave, which was diametrically opposed on Mars, which is one of the Ontario incubators. The concept's really good. I've always struggled with them because it's so much work to gain access to the incubator and to the people that I need to meet. Invest Ottawa is reinventing itself right now, and I hold out hope that will work for new entrepreneurs. But in general, it's the difficulty of accessing the incubator that literally drives me around the bend. And so a lot of times I just don't bother. Again, like I said, I'll go off and do it on my own because it's too much work for me to try and get access to something that's at the end of the day, a very small amount of help or money to come in and help my company.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to take that one?
So I think I'd like to sort of amplify that, but slightly differently. At the beginning, we did have quite a bit of troubles accessing these programs. But an interesting thing happens once you do that. And that is that the people who run those programs become intimately involved with your company, whether you want it or not. And so there is a lot of work to get there in the first place, and then there's a lot of work to do the things that they want you to do, some of which are good and some of which are just wacky ideas. But nonetheless, you still have to engage and you still have to do that stuff. Is it a net value add? Jury's out. I'll let you know in a couple of years.
Thank you.
Just an addendum to that question. I mean, a number of incubators that I've gone and talked to, they know how to do software, but they admittedly struggle with hardware. I'm just wondering, I mean, gentlemen, in your experience, is there any advice you could give to incubators in terms of what you need as hardware companies to help them?
So I think it depends on what your definition of incubator is. I don't think Mars is an incubator. And so I don't have any kind of advice for them on that front. So far as a software incubator is concerned, I've run software companies. That might be something to lower your cost. I would personally prefer to do it by myself. But there is sort of an atmosphere that goes along with an incubator that gets the core team of developers together and gets things going in the correct direction. So far as a hardware lab environment would be concerned, that starts to look like a hackerspace, and I can see that turning into chaos pretty quickly. But, you know, I can't really comment. I don't know.
So one more question. I know I'm standing between you and drinks, so let's move. No more questions? Well, thank you very much, and thank you to the
Could I
panel.
make one last comment, Adam?
Sure.
It's a little bit unrelated. I've been very negative on VC money, but there's a huge amount of angel money out in Canada,
Right.
especially around the Toronto area. I don't know about Ottawa, huge amount. They're looking for things to invest in. I've not talked to it because until I can figure a way of paying them back, because it's a loan, you got to pay it back. Until I have confidence I can do that, I'm living in a loan. But there is money out there.
I've raised quite a bit of money. I won't say the exact number from angels, but we have 17 in, and it's not 200,000 you were mentioning, right? We have quite a bit of money from angels in, and they are very good to work with. So since it's sort of a how do you do a startup panel, I would also recommend that.
Thank you.